Hi, welcome to episode 20 of The Teacher's Promise and the monthly Teacher's Report. I'm your host, Brett Hansen, and in addition to celebrating, inspiring, and supporting educators around the world, once a month I share some basic information about an important educational issue. Kind of like a school report, without all the ums and stage fright. I'll try to keep the reports as informational as possible, but to place the topic in context, I'll explain how the issue affects my life as an educator in a small rural school district. This time, we're discussing how inflation affects our salaries and long-term compensation. As a teacher, I like Einstein's theory of good explanations. He said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. So a fundamental goal of the Teacher's Report will always be to provide basic information in everyday, easy-to-understand language, especially since every report will be created by a teacher for teachers. If I don't understand a topic, after researching it, I'll ask an expert, as I did with this one. If I still don't understand it sufficiently to explain it simply, I'll ask someone else to report on it. Sources and more complex notes will always be available in the show notes. The first Teacher's Report, episode 13, focused on rural homelessness. Please consider going back to listen to it if homelessness affects you or your students in any way. Unfortunately, we often don't realize its presence or effect because kids in society hide homelessness. But whether we see it or not, if it affects them, it affects us. Now, every episode will not connect to next month's, but the teacher salaries and inflation issue is directly connected to the next topic for next month, the national teacher shortage. So I will comment a little on the great teacher shortage, and then we'll continue the discussion next month. Everybody knows the primary drawback to pursuing a career in education, the reason so many parents try to talk their college-aged kids out of becoming teachers: the pay. The opportunity to serve our community, care for and mentor children, and nurture our souls are worth some financial sacrifice. But every sacrifice has a limit. In order to understand the sacrifice, we need to understand a few important financial terms and phrases first. Inflation. It may have been a while since you sat in economics class, but inflation is the increase in prices as the purchasing power of money decreases. So if an apple consistently costs $1 on July 1st, and then consistently costs $1.10 1 year later, and the same increase applies mainly to most of the other items we buy, then inflation has risen about 10%. Determining the particulars of inflation is complicated, but the basic concept is not. Most economists think some slow-growing inflation is good for the economy as long as salaries keep up. But inflation is not usually good for teachers, so experts came up with our next term to explain part of the problem. The teacher wage penalty, the measurement of how much less, thus penalty, teachers earn than other equivalent college graduates, especially as inflation occurs. A teacher wage premium is possible if teachers' wages increase more than other equivalent college graduates. Spoiler alert, they don't. The last term we need to remember is benefits. Additional costs employers pay that benefit the employee directly. Generally, experts don't include taxes and benefits discussions because every employer must pay employee taxes like Social Security. Even though Social Security does benefit workers, all employers must pay it, so it isn't necessarily a basic inflationary comparison term or issue. For teachers, this usually includes health insurance, pension payments, and various other negotiable benefits. The best way to understand inflation's effect on teacher salary is to compare the teacher wage penalty over a longer period of time, perhaps a shorter career in education. Let's say about 25 years. According to a study cited in a 2022 article by the Economic Policy Institute, inflation-adjusted wages for teachers have risen $29 since 1996. Just $29, from $1,319 in 1996 to $1,348 in 2022. While other equivalent four-year college graduates' inflation-adjusted wages have risen $445, from $1,564 in 1996 to $2,009 in 2022. Ignoring for the moment the frustrating fact that other equivalent four-year college graduates earn $657 more per week on average, the truly problematic issue right now is that the teacher wage penalty gap is increasing enormously, meaning the situation is getting worse as our jobs get harder. I know people will argue that we get summers off, but we don't ask for them off, and the teacher wage penalty gap shouldn't get worse because the sun shines more. In 1996, the teacher wage penalty was 6.1%. In 2022, the teacher wage penalty rose to 23.5%. But as non-teachers often point out, rightfully so, we do earn better benefits. A little side note, teachers in 1996 earned similar benefits to us today, but over the last 25 years, the private sector has sacrificed benefits for salary, so it's important to include benefits in our comparison. According to the same EPI report, teachers earn approximately 9.3% more in benefits payments than the other equivalent college graduates in the study. So according to the study, the total teacher compensation penalty is not 23.5%, but actually 14.2%. This issue becomes more complex in context. Some teachers are penalized more based on where they work, urban versus rural districts, poor versus wealthy communities, conservative versus progressive politics, and there are other issues. But for now, we need a clear starting point to understand the effect of inflation on teacher salaries. I will share some of this complexity at the end of the show for listeners who want more information on a small rural district. For now, teachers' purchasing power has decreased 23.5% in comparison to other equivalent four-year college graduates, but our benefits are better, so we've lost approximately 14.2% in total compensation. Unfortunately, other reliable sources think the situation is worse. The National Education Association ranks and analyzes teacher salaries and education spending by state every year. They estimate that the national average teacher salary for the 2021-22 school year rose only 1.7% from the previous year to approximately $66,397 nationally. But when adjusted for inflation, the average salary actually decreased by approximately 3.9% over the last decade. Please remember, national inflation rose 4.7% in 2021 alone. Inflation is hurting most middle-class Americans more and more each year, but it penalizes teachers even more for a variety of reasons. First, public schools don't make money, so they can't pass the inflationary increases on to the customers. Our children are not our customers. Second, many states, like Wisconsin, enacted legislation that restricts spending on teachers' salaries or benefits. For example, Wisconsin's Act 10 requires teachers to pay at least 12% of their insurance and 50% of their retirement contribution. Districts cannot pay those benefits. Before Act 10, many districts paid all the insurance and the retirement contributions. Schools were legally obliged to cut benefits when Act 10 passed, and many did not then increase pay. Actually, many districts froze pay and never compensated for the lost wages. But we don't usually talk about the specifics of the benefits part of the total compensation. Mainly we talk about salary. So many people, teachers included, don't know that their total compensation decreased dramatically or why. Part of the teacher wage benefit penalty is hidden in benefit restrictions. In the end, the National Education Association estimates that teachers earn $2,150 less than 10 years ago when adjusted for inflation. Not a little more, like the first study, but a lot less. And if you work in a rural or poorer district, where kids need good teachers even more, the situation is worse. So like other middle-class Americans, teachers are slipping out of the middle class, just a lot faster than other equivalent four-year college graduates. And although we might not always know exactly why, we certainly feel it. According to an article in Education Week, 74% of teachers do not believe their salary is fair for the work they do. Once again, everyone knows that teachers don't do it for the pay. We know this career requires a financial sacrifice. But things feel much worse today because they are much worse. According to the same EdWeek survey used in the article, in 2012, only 65% of teachers didn't believe their salary was fair for the work they do. Only 65%. So the problem is not new, but it is getting much worse. In my own private small survey, I polled teachers on my Facebook teachers group, The Teacher's Promise, and 100% of them said they did not think the pay was fair. Please feel free to join and then participate in the discussion on the Teacher's Promise Facebook page, which will continue for the next week. A quick side note, right after I sent out the poll, I received a DM from an educational associate asking if associates could be included in the discussion, and of course I said yes, and she wanted to let me know that their economic situation is far, far worse. She gave me permission to use this information in this podcast episode, but she told me that her W-2 that she just recently got showed that she made approximately $20,000 for being an educational associate at her school, and that's something we definitely need to discuss. Once again, teachers will sacrifice financial security for our nation's children, for our community, for the ones we love. But how much? And for how long? All sacrifice has a limit. Personally, I've struggled with both the teacher wage penalty and the effect of inflation for a long time. My family joined me at the state capitol to march in protest of Act 10, but after 23 years in teaching, my choices have already been made. I've become a better person because I'm a teacher, but my choice to teach in a low-paying rural district, as my nation asked many of us to do, has had huge financial consequences for my family. The overall career earning loss is stunning when calculated over a 25 or 30-year career, and then on into retirement. But it was my choice, and like many of you, I would do it again. But more and more people are not choosing to do it. More people are rejecting education as a career. And I think it's important that we understand the reasons why. At this point, I personally have two main concerns. First, as we'll discuss in the next teacher's report, younger teachers are leaving the profession in record numbers. Potential teachers are choosing other careers for financial reasons. Teacher certification programs can't recruit enough students. And many of my friends and colleagues cannot live a middle-class life as a teacher unless somebody else in their household brings in a good living. It's sad, but a career in teaching often leads toward poverty. Second, and equally important, all those people who might have joined and stayed in the noblest profession will not have the opportunity to enrich their souls through years of service and dedication to other people's children. We hear about the disintegrating fabric of society. We hear about how people have become more selfish, serve less, and don't care as much about our society, while at the same time we vote again and again to lower the taxes essential to caring for our children and providing a respectful salary for educators. Please note, I am concerned about our children too, but the Teacher's Promise program is for educators. Students don't listen to this podcast. It's for you, not them. And even though we are adults, responsible for our decisions, we are people too. We are worthy of society's concern and respect. We deserve to earn a good income for the noble, essential work we do. So I'm primarily worried about teachers. Yes, this teacher penalty problem coincides with other difficult issues. increased testing demands, increased standardized curriculum, COVID-19 stressors, violence in schools, etc. But that makes dealing with the teacher wage penalty even more important because the great teacher shortage has been coming for a while. I remember experts predicting an exodus while I was in my student teaching 24 years ago, but it didn't really happen the way they predicted. The ranks thinned out a little, but nothing like today. I don't think we are nearing the sacrifice limit. I'm pretty sure we've passed it. We started this report with the understanding that everybody knows the main problem: the continued deterioration of teacher compensation. Hopefully, we now have a little better understanding of the terms and why it's happening. I don't really know what you should do with this knowledge. It's probably too late for me to benefit from any changes because change takes time in public education, and I'm locked into my district. But I feel responsible to try to do something for younger teachers because week after week, I applaud all of you for becoming a teacher, becoming an educator, and serving our children. And I don't know which of you are single parents with 3 kids, diminishing health benefits, and college bills on the horizon. If I'm going to celebrate teachers for joining the noblest profession and sacrificing so much, the least I can do is cultivate this important conversation. So once again, if you'd like to discuss what should be done by our leaders, or what we can do, or what we should understand, please join the teacher wage penalty discussion on the Teacher's Promise Facebook group. I will certainly use some of your comments and suggestions in next month's report on the teacher shortage. And please return next week when we listen to 4 wonderful coaches talk about the importance of compassionate coaching. In part 1 of this 2-part discussion, they'll share their stories, why they believe compassionate coaching improves character, and how it connects to classroom teaching. Once again, thanks for joining the noblest profession and loving all children like your own. Thank you for your sacrifice, and please remember to take care of yourself. You deserve it. Until next time.